Susan Galeska. This is Sarah Jacob. We studied the training aspect that Jackie and Priya both did. So some of the things that you're going to hear is going to be repeat, but it's also, we're going to elaborate a little bit more on some of the items that they talked about as well. So you're going to see it from our perspective as well. I am a parent, I am a teacher, and I'm studying to be a principal. So I see it as a win-win-win altogether, Student Governance Council. So, shall we begin? Yes. Okay, next.
Okay.
We studied Chicago's, how they do their local school councils. We'll just call it school governance councils because that's what we know what it is here in Hartford. We studied Chicago's training.
And Chicago's training, what we found, was focused on specific content-based areas in which the LSCs, which is local school councils, utilize this content at the council meetings. And these are the 6 mandatory training modules.
They have 6 modules. Now the modules come in a over 350-page handout. So when you go to one of these training sessions, you go to training session number 1. They give you chapter number 1, and they go, here you go. Now, depending on who you have as your training facilitator, some go into it a little bit more in depth, some don't. Good thing about having this over 350-page manual is everybody has it right in front of them. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. It tells you exactly what to do. In one of them is meetings. Number 2 is meetings. It tells you how to write the agenda. Gives you templates to do the agenda. It tells you where to post, who to invite. It tells you everything that you need to do, how to write the minutes. Very scripted, 364-page document, I think it was. And it was hard for us to get. But once we got it, we were like, all right, now we have a curriculum.
And we will. It does leave lots of leeway for the trainers to basically put out their lessons how they feel is most necessary. So, into our limitations of the Chicago LSCs.
Now, you have to remember, too, something that Jackie and Priya mentioned was, Jackie and Priya mentioned that Hartford is really jumping right into it. Very, very ambitious. Chicago has done this for 5 years and they're still improving and modifying. So you have to understand that this is a work in progress. Limitations, inflexibility and inconvenience of the training. It really wasn't convenient for a lot of the people.
A lot of feedback that we got was it was merely reading a bunch of slides. It wasn't really getting into the heart of decision making and how to run the school council. It was very general about talking about budgets, and the training sessions lacked focus on new educational practices. There wasn't enough resources in time or money. And the last limitation that we found was the need for more training in understanding what good teaching is, data, how to interpret data, and curriculum development.
Now, as a parent, I would have no idea how to interpret the data my child comes home with. But because I've had the teacher training, and I've written report cards, and I've written curriculum. Am I loud enough, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. My students tell me, and my child tells me I do have a big mouth, so excuse me.
But if we could use the mic question, we're recording that. Really
okay. So because I have the teacher training to understand that and writing a curriculum, I'm able to understand that. Now you're asking Student Governance Council members from the community to just step in and know this stuff. You can't do that. You have to bring everybody to the same playing field. You have to make sure that everybody there is educated, because in the end, we all want the same thing. We all want to make a better school community. Now, training for Hartford. Leadership Greater Hartford has been trained. They've been subcontracted, and they've been training the school governance councils to be a wonderful team dynamic. Their 4 focuses, as Jackie and Priya already mentioned, are the getting to know you. How do you resolve a conflict? How do you be respectfully disagree? And that's what Greater Hartford, Leadership Hartford is training people to do, that get that group dynamic.
While that's a great thing, we feel that it was lacking basically content-based. So that was one of our major limitations when we looked at the Hartford SGCs.
If you think about a teacher, you teach a teacher how to set up her classroom. Well, that's good, but now on day 1, does she really know what to do? Leadership Greater Hartford is teaching people to set up their classroom per se, their meetings. Then you have Chicago. Chicago is giving the curriculum. So can you just give a teacher the curriculum and say, go ahead, go teach? You kind of need that combination of the two and add a little bit more to it. So you see that there's different dynamics of how different places utilize and focus their ideas.
And these were our problems that I just stated a couple. So focus on more content-related tasks, and even more in-depth trainings on understanding budget. And because in Chicago, it was more of like they touched on little things, but there wasn't in-depth training on any of the content areas. And obviously, like we said, Hartford just focuses on the strong team dynamics.
We're noticing that Connecticut doesn't have any specific clear guidelines. In the policy itself, it was very vague. You just need to implement. Okay, that's great, but really, what do you mean by that? It's quite vague. You really need to be specific in exactly what you want. As a teacher, we have learning objectives. What is it specifically that we want our children to know? What is it specifically that you want student governance councils to do? What do you need them to do? Some other difficulties was recruiting competent members. Millie is a great advocate for her, and Gwen is for her community, but you also have to remember that you want that community heard. And you want people to go in there and be able to address the issues in a respectful but direct approach.
And another problem, the inconsistencies in the training because there is no overall curriculum like Chicago has. Yeah?
I'm sorry, I don't know if it's a program question.
Yeah.
I'm just curious, how do you define competency?
Well, that was one of the things that we were talking about. Competency, good question. When we were talking about the training, we were talking about making sure people go and actively engage in the training. And so when they're there, they're asking questions, they want to know. They attend the training sessions. So when we talk about competency of that person, it's that person that wants to actually be involved in it. That was a great question, though. I appreciate that. Is that okay? Did I answer, or did you want me to elaborate more?
Well, because one of the problems they found in Chicago and Kansas City is trying to keep the membership active. Because what was happening was they'll go through the elections, it starts off with fanfare, then over time, they just start dwindling out. Now well done enough to engage people around what's the core purpose for School Governance Council. So we're hoping that some of the ideas they put forth today will kind of help inspire people to stay more connected because they see that the School Governance Councils have a critical role versus some of the more general things that they were trained in Chicago and some of the other places to do. So this is directed, and perhaps competent is not the right word, but more active is probably what we're looking for. Because you gotta maintain that active participation beyond the excitement that everyone's going to feel now that everyone has a voice in the conversation. We want to keep everyone active.
It might not be the word
The appropriate word.
right, because it could be exclusionary. If we want to engage everybody in the community, we don't want it to become hierarchical
Yep.
and eliminate people who may not have had, who are victims of the system as it is, and may not have had opportunities. So they are not college graduates. They may not even be high school graduates.
Right.
They may not even have gotten out of 8th grade, but they're parents, and they need to be involved. And so I think we need to be very, very sensitive to how we use the verbiage to describe the complement who's going to be eligible, to be honest.
Right.
We don't want to be too
And I want to add that where the culture of the individuals in the school districts are considered and celebrated as a part of the training. And we feel that's an important part to make sure it becomes an inclusive process and everyone gets a chance to be a part of it. I'm almost done, you came late. But we're just saying culturally responsiveness has to be a part of it.
Is a training of self-assessment of the councils? Was that part?
No, as a matter of fact, in Chicago, now again, you have to understand, we had to do this project in about 5 days' time. And that's with a Saturday and Sunday. So it was hard to contact people, and a lot of our communication was emails and such, and a couple phone interviews. So you got to understand where our approach coming to you too is we've had like this much time. There is so much out there. Chicago, the parent trigger in California. But one of the things that we did notice, the only type of evaluation we actually saw was in Chicago. They did principal evaluation. So, and it was basically feedback at the end of a year from different places. Yes, ma'am.
Council that went through the process with leadership of Greater Hartford. I don't really know how many people you guys interviewed to ask them questions, but I think as time progresses, people pull away from team dynamics, but I think the first 3 sessions that we had were extremely important to why a lot of councils were able to accomplish so much in such a short amount of time. So I don't really think pulling back and combining is necessarily one of the greatest things, because team dynamic structures being able to talk about the budget without people wanting to rip each other's heads off because of egos. More training around the budget is extremely important, but one of the things that we had discussed to improve that was to make it longer, and they also had Victor be able to come out to individual councils if they needed more information and content about how to do the budget and if they had any questions. Also, we had coaches that were on site that could always relay any questions we had, and there was always open communication. So it just was the initiative of individual councils to get that information that they needed, because not everybody needed long sessions on the budget. Some councils needed a little more information on other things, so it was more individual council based versus training to the masses when some things can become overly daunting that didn't necessarily need more information. But next year, I know we are having a little more budget training, but there was always the opportunity to get more information if you needed it. So I love what I'm hearing, but as sitting as a person who was on the council who went through the process, I feel like the content was very enriched and there wasn't enough time, but a lot of it is because it happened so fast and we're working to rectify it for this year.
Right.
But there was always open opportunities for people who were on councils to get that information and to get that type of training if they wanted it.
And we did learn about the coaches, and that was one of the things that we really loved about Leadership Greater Hartford. They had coaches go out and sit in the council meetings, am I correct?
Yes.
And what they did was, then they relayed back the information. Oh, this is what we need. We need another session on budgets. Okay, we need some more training on that. So that was a great liaison between the two to get what you guys really wanted and what you really needed, which again, your voice was heard.
Now, we have time for question and answer. So we'll let them finish and then let the other group finish, and then we have a larger block.
Now, our recommendation was that we actually combine the two. Definitely, we need that team dynamic. We need to have that group of people that are going